Welcome back to God Doesn't Sound Like That, a series on discerning false prophets, bad fruit, and the voices that Jesus warns us about. Today, in our final episode, I want to close this series with a very real question. How do you actually know who is safe to follow? Because that's the real question, isn't it? After things like church hurt, manipulation, bad fruit, spiritual pressure, after watching power use God language to protect itself, how do you know what's safe now? How do you tell the difference between somebody being gifted and somebody actually being trustworthy? The difference between strong leadership and clean leadership. Between a person who sounds right and a person who is actually safe to stay close to. Because some people are impressive, but that doesn't mean that they are safe. Some people are persuasive. That doesn't mean that they are healthy. Some people are deeply gifted. That still does not mean that they are safe to follow sometimes. I think a lot of us are carrying that confusion right now, especially if you've come out of spaces where charisma was rewarded, intensity was praised, and people were taught to override what they knew because the leader, the movement, or the church was anointed. So today I want to get really practical, not just who to avoid, but what to actually look for. What healthy leadership actually feels like, what clean authority feels like, what safety feels like in real life. Because safe does not mean weak. Safe does not mean passive. Safe does not mean someone never challenges you, never corrects you, or never tells the truth directly. Safe means that their power is clean. It means that they do not need fear to influence you. They do not need confusion to impress you. They do not need your silence to stay in control. They do not need you to become smaller so that they can become bigger. That is a very different kind of power. I think that difference matters a lot, especially for people whose minds and bodies have been shaped by manipulative leadership, unhealthy religion, family systems, controlling movements, or fear-based environments. Because when you've lived around unclean power for a long time, your whole entire system can get mixed up. Reference my live for this morning around mental health if you want to reference that more. You can start mistaking control for safety, certainty for wisdom, intensity for strength, or even chaos for passion. And that's why this conversation is so important, because mental health really does matter in all aspects. Your mind matters, your nervous system matters, your sense of clarity matters, and at the end of the day, all of those things do impact your physical body system. A person is not just safe because they can quote scripture, command a room, or make people emotional. If being around someone consistently leaves you more mentally scrambled, more self-doubting, more dependent, more shut down, more anxious, more afraid to be honest, that should tell you something. You got gas, dude. Safe leadership should not keep eroding your mind, your voice, your peace, or even your sense of self. It should not train you to portray your own clarity. This is why Galatians chapter 5 matters so much. Good one. The fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. That is not just a nice church list. That is a map. Because if someone is safe to follow, there should be some actual evidence of that fruit in how they lead, how they respond, how they handle truth, and what grows around them over time. Not perfection, and that matters. The goal is not perfection. The goal is fruit. The goal is honesty. You are gassy, man. The goal is clean power. The goal is whether truth can actually exist around them. So no, you are not looking for flawless people. You're looking for real evidence. Can they be questioned without punishing people for it? Can they admit they're wrong? Can they apologize without making it about them? Can they handle disagreement without turning you into the enemy? Can they stay honest with the truth, even if it costs them something? Those are not small questions. Those are safety questions. And I want to add one other one. Do you feel like yourself, in the healthiest sense of yourself, the most God-given sense of yourself, do you feel more of that or less of that when you're around that person or that thing. Because safe people do not require self-betrayal to stay connected. They do not need you to mute your discernment, mute your body, your questions, your boundaries, or even your truth. If staying connected to someone always costs you your clarity, your peace, your voice, your honesty, those things should tell you something. If you look at James chapter 3, it says that wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits. Easy to be entreated, reachable, approachable. That matters, because a lot of people have only known authority that felt moody, defensive, fragile, intimidating, or absolutely impossible to approach. But wisdom from above, wisdom from God, does not act like that. It is not untouchable. It's not allergic to feedback, and it is not constantly punishing people for honesty. If you look at 1 Peter chapter 5, it says, "Feed the flock of God, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being ensamples to the flock," not lording over people, and that is huge. Safe leadership does not need to rule your inner world. It can guide without dominating. It can influence without controlling. It can teach without swallowing people whole. And I love, if you look at 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, Paul even says, "Not for that we have dominion over your faith, but are helpers of your joy." Helpers of your joy, not dominion over your faith. That is such a beautiful picture of clean leadership. Not controlling your conscience, not replacing your relationship with God, not acting like they own your mind, your spirit, or your discernment. Helping, not dominating. And I think very practically, that means if you are trying to know whether a person, a church, a leader, a movement, or a community is safe, you need to ask yourself these questions. Can I ask an honest question here? Can I disagree without being shamed? Am I allowed to say no? Can I leave without being demonized? Does truth matter more than image? Are vulnerable people protected? Do I feel more mentally clear and grounded or more dependent on the person speaking? Those questions will tell you a lot. And I want to say something to the people that are still rebuilding. In a lot of ways, I still am. If you have come out of manipulation, control, church harm, or fear-based systems, you may not trust your own read yet, and that makes complete sense. You may not know what safety actually feels like. That also makes sense. You may feel suspicious of calm, steady, kind people, because chaos feels so much more familiar than peace. And it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your map is still healing. Healing your map is part of the work. Because learning what is safe is part of learning how to not keep repeating what harmed you. And this is where I want to tie the whole series together. We started this series by naming that not everything that sounds like spiritual is actually God. All the way through, though, that has been the thread. We've talked about bad fruit. We've talked about pressure and spectacle, about truth-telling, fear and discernment. And we've even talked about borrowing, like, places of power using God's voice. But this is where we're going to come to end it. How do you know who is safe to follow after all of that? You watch what grows around them. You watch what happens to your mind, your body, your honesty, and your peace when you are around them. You watch whether their presence makes more room for truth, more room for humanity, more room for your conscience, more room for your God-given discernment. Safe people don't need your fear. Safe people don't need your silence. They don't need your confusion, and they definitely don't need you to self-betray yourself. What they tend to have is fruit. Humility, consistency, clean power, a steadiness that does not ask you to lose yourself in order to stay connected. So no, I am not ending this series by saying never follow anyone. I am saying follow carefully. Watch the fruit. Watch the patterns. Watch what happens to your mental clarity, your voice, and your peace around them. Side note, it's great to watch what happens when kids are around them too, because those are great tells. Because safe people do not replace your discernment. They help you sharpen it. And that's where I want to leave this first series. You are allowed to stop giving your trust away so cheaply. You are allowed to ask better questions. You are allowed to look for fruit. And you are absolutely allowed to walk away from leadership that requires self-betrayal and is not safe, church or otherwise. Thanks for being a part of this series with me, guys. I'm sure there'll be lots more to come. If you have, if this series has encouraged you in any capacity, let me know. Reach out with a comment. And if you'd like to see other things come from me and other things that you'd like to hear spoken about, let me know. Yeah, go love somebody like Jesus would.